You never imagined you would find yourself here, shivering in the midnight mist outside an asylum so old it seems to have grown straight out of the earth. Every stone soaked in secrets no one sane would dare to name. The air is colder than you, expected sharper, like it carries warnings from all the lost souls who crossed this threshold before you. Your breath turns to fog, each exhale a ghost, each inhale a silent dare. Above you, the asylum looms, a fortress of brick and iron, windows, like empty eyes, doors heavy enough to keep hope out as much as to keep madness in. Somewhere behind you, the world you once called home still ticks and hums, but it already feels imaginary, a dream you are about to wake from, or a memory you are being forced to surrender. Your hands tremble, and you pretend it is just the chill, but you know better. You can feel the wrongness in the air, the way the night wraps itself around the walls, suffocating and close, thick with all the stories the living and the dead have left behind. Somewhere in the distance, a bell tolls, dull, slow, funereal, and you count the beats, heart thudding in your chest in time with the echo. 7, 8, 9. The sound goes on longer than it should, as if time itself refuses to move inside these gates. You try to swallow the fear, but it sticks in your throat, thick and bitter as old medicine. The iron gates stand ajar, just wide, enough for you to slip through, but as you approach, the hinges groan with a sound that raises the hair on your arms. You pause, caught by the sudden certainty that these gates do not open for visitors. They open for prisoners, for the desperate, for the abandoned. You take a breath so deep it burns, step forward, and let the night swallow you whole. Every footfall feels heavier than the last, as if the ground itself resents your intrusion. Your shoes splash in puddles, sending ripples across the mud, and the sickly sweet smell of rot rises from the earth. Damp leaves, dead roots, forgotten things left to decay in the dark. As you cross the courtyard, your senses sharpen. You notice the thin yellow glow leaking from a single window high above, the silhouette of a nurse passing back and forth, pale cap, stiff uniform, movements crisp as a metronome. You imagine her eyes measuring, appraising, always calculating who belongs and who must be broken. Somewhere to your left, a sharp cry splits the night, a voice pitched too high for comfort, cut short as if someone clapped a hand over a mouth. Your skin prickles, your heart leaps, and you force yourself to keep moving. You have heard the rumors, the stories whispered in rooms far from here, the screams that echo after midnight, the treatments meant to cure minds already battered by loneliness, grief, or just the crime of being different. You reach the steps, their stone-worn smooth by generations of feet, some hopeful, most defeated. You look up, and for a second you swear you see a face in the window, pale, round-eyed, pressed to the glass, vanishing as soon as you blink. Your mind races with possibilities. Ghost, patient, warning, reflection. You shake your head, fighting off the dread crawling under your skin. The doors loom, carved with patterns you cannot quite decipher, symbols meant to inspire order or obedience, or perhaps just to distract you from the reality that waits inside. You hesitate, caught in that last sliver of freedom, the world outside, just a step behind you, the unknown yawning ahead. You think about running. You think about begging for another chance, another place, any fate but this. But the wind kicks up, cold and insistent, and something in its howl sounds like your name, reminding you that you have come too far to turn back. You step forward, raise a fist, and rap once on the door. The sound rings out, too loud, too final. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, with a jolt, the door swings open and a nurse, her face a blank mask, her hands pale and steady, gestures you in. The air changes as soon as you cross the threshold. Warmth, yes, but the wrong kind. A thick, stifling heat, heavy with sweat, ammonia, and stale food. Every wall is yellowed with age, streaked with water stains and old handprints. You catch the distant clatter of dishes, the murmur of voices not quite sane, the shuffling feet of people who have learned to move quietly. The nurse says nothing, simply checks a clipboard, scribbles your name, no, not your name, just a number, and points you down a hallway that seems to stretch forever. The doors on either side are all shut, but you hear whispers from behind them. Snatches of prayers, threats, laughter that curdles your blood. Your body is tense, every muscle tight as piano wire. You wonder what they will take first, your coat, your shoes, your dignity, your memories. You wonder if you will make it through the night with your mind intact, if you will become one of the stories whispered to the next arrival, if you will have the strength to fight for even a moment of mercy. Every step takes you deeper into the heart of the asylum, past wards with names you cannot pronounce, through air thick with disinfectant and the metallic tang of fear. You reach a final door, and the nurse motions you inside. You catch your reflection in a polished metal panel, pale, wild-eyed, already changed by everything you have not yet endured. You draw a breath, fighting to hold on to whatever scraps of courage you have left, because this is only the beginning. The night is waiting, hungry and patient, and you are about to find out what it really means to survive. And as the door clicks shut behind you, sealing away the world you once knew, you realize the only way out is through the rituals, the rules, the darkness, the madness, and the silent stories carved into the bones of this place. You cannot help but wonder, what will you discover about yourself, about the others, about the hidden machinery of fear and hope before the sun rises? And if you make it to morning, will you ever be the same again? You stand before the asylum, gates, iron bars clawing up toward a sky that has forgotten how to shine. And for a moment you wonder what kind of person you must have been in a previous life to deserve this exact moment, this chill breathing down the back of your neck, this sense that if you move even one step closer, the world you knew will vanish forever. The fog has teeth tonight. It nips at your ankles, curling and clutching at your boots like 1,000 ghostly fingers desperate for warmth. But all you feel is that creeping cold, working its way up your spine, rooting itself in the place between your shoulder blades. You try to steady your breath, but even your lungs do not want to cooperate. The air tastes like old coins, damp stone, a whisper of rot, and the sort of musty secrets that have soaked into the walls for centuries. You look down at your hands, fingers twitching, a little clammy, a little too alive, and you almost laugh. Because right now you would give anything for numbness, for the sweet absence of sensation, for the ability to float past this place like you do in nightmares. The gates groan, metal shrieking as if in warning, but you know it is too late to turn back. You have signed your name, you have swallowed your pride, and now every step forward is a small surrender. You cross that final threshold and it feels like being swallowed whole, like stepping into a mouth that will not let you go. The courtyard is just mud and puddles, a few weeds braving the cracks, but every echo of your footsteps is amplified. So sharp, so lonely, like each one is a question. Are you sure? You see the shadows first. They move differently here, thick and oily, sliding along the walls and pooling in the corners where no moon dares to linger. Somewhere to your left, a window slams shut, just a flash of candlelight behind warped glass, then gone. You tell yourself you are not being watched, but you feel the stare of windows stacked 4 floors high, black and sightless, except for the unlucky ones still lit, still hungry for the spectacle of someone new. You breathe through your nose, trying to hold back the rising panic, and all you get for your trouble is the raw stink of mildew, ammonia, coal smoke, and a bitter metallic tang that stings the inside of your nostrils. Someone screams far off, shrill, ragged, not quite human, and the sound ricochets through your chest, scraping against your ribs, refusing to settle. You try to convince yourself it is a dog, a trick of the wind, anything but what you know. It is. Your body knows, though. Your heart kicks up, throat tight, palms suddenly slick and useless. For one reckless second you think about running, just turning, slamming into those gates, demanding your freedom. But you see the watchman's silhouette behind the gatehouse glass, the flash of a lantern, and you know there is no escape once. You have been counted. You take inventory of what you have left. A suitcase, its handle already cutting into your palm. The clothes you chose so carefully, now sodden and useless against this wet chill. A name that will mean nothing in 10 minutes. A story that has already been rewritten by someone else's pen. The walls loom over you, gray and battered. A fortress, designed not for protection but for containment, built to keep something inside. and you are only just beginning to suspect that what needs locking up is not always what people claim. You blink hard, trying to shake the sense that every surface is watching you, judging you, weighing your worth like a butcher appraises meat. The path ahead is slick with rain and something darker, a sheen you do not dare examine too closely. Your next step feels heavier than gravity. You wonder briefly if you will ever feel light again. The front doors stand open, a maw carved from wood and shadow, and for a moment you catch your reflection in the brass handle, pale, drawn, a little wild around the eyes. You look like someone who has come here willingly, and that realization cuts deeper than any insult. The nurse who greets you is all starch and suspicion, clipboard clutched to her chest, eyes flicking up and down as if she can measure your soul with just a glance. You offer a weak greeting. She does not reply. She just motions, sharp and impatient, and you stumble forward, the gate slamming shut behind you with a thunderclap finality that rings in your ears long after the echo dies. That sound, metal against metal, freedom giving way to confinement, will haunt you, far longer than any scream. You realize you have stopped breathing. You force your lungs to work again, swallowing the taste of fear, the bitterness of surrender. You tell yourself you are stronger than this, that one night in a place built for suffering cannot possibly break you. But as you take that first step, inside, floorboards creaking, the world behind you fading to a memory, the world ahead promising only uncertainty, you feel a strange, electric thrill. Maybe it is terror. Maybe it is hope. Maybe it is the first thread unraveling. But even as you cross that threshold, you know that whatever story you believed about yourself will not survive this night unscathed. And somewhere deep in your bones, you start to wonder if anyone who enters these gates ever walks back out the same. You wish you could turn around just one more time, but you know that if you look back now, you might never look forward again. And you have not even glimpsed what truly waits for you inside. Yet, your senses rebel before your mind can catch up. The very air inside this place feels thick enough to chew, soured by decades of neglect and 1,000 stories that nobody wanted to remember. You think you have smelled bad before? Old subway cars, moldy basements, the sour breath of a sick relative. But nothing prepares you for the way the asylum's stench seems to crawl into your lungs and settle there, a living thing determined to infect you with its misery. The walls are sweating not just with damp, but with an invisible rot that oozes out from every seam, mixing the reek of spoiled potatoes with the chemical burn of ammonia and the raw tang of fear. Somewhere overhead, something drips, steady and relentless, the kind of sound that worms its way into your brain and convinces you time has slowed to a crawl. You want to gag. You want to back away. Instead, you force your feet forward because every instinct screams that staying still will only make you a target. The corridor stretches ahead, lined with doors that never fully close and windows fogged with grime. Every surface is a palette of sickly green, mustard yellow, and bruised purple, peeling paint curling like dead leaves, plaster pocked with old scars, and fresh graffiti scratched in desperation. You run your fingers along the wall, half for balance, half to convince yourself you are still real, but all you get is the faint grit of crumbling plaster and the memory of countless other hands, each one clawing for a way out. The silence here is never absolute. Somewhere in the belly of the asylum, a patient is muttering, low, repetitive, a litany of grievances or prayers that you cannot decipher. Closer by, footsteps echo in patterns you do not recognize, heavy, shuffling, urgent, or resigned. Each sound is its own warning, its own reminder that survival is a game with rules nobody will bother to explain. You taste the dust on your tongue, metallic and sharp, almost bloody. You breathe in again, searching for anything familiar, and instead get hit by the ghost of overcooked cabbage, vinegar, and something that might be bleach or might be something worse. You cannot decide which is more suffocating, the smells or the weight of invisible eyes tracking your every move. You sense them long before you see them, the way a wild animal knows it is being watched. There is no hiding from it, no way to shake off that prickling unease that tells you every second, you are a stranger here and everyone knows it. You glance to your right, just in time to catch the flicker of movement. A pair of eyes peering through the sliver of an open door. Quick as a rat and just as wary, they vanish before you can even process their shape. But you know you are not alone, not for a second, not even in the spaces that look empty. The orderlies move past, their shoes squeaking on filthy tiles, faces pinched and closed off, their gaze sliding over you as if you are already another piece of furniture. The nurses' uniforms are starched and ghostly, faces half shrouded by the shadows under their caps. And when they speak, it is in clipped, tired voices that barely bother to hide their contempt. You pick up snatches of conversation. New. One, lost cause. Keep him quiet. None of it meant for you. All of it slicing at the little dignity you thought you had managed to hold on to. Every time you think you have adjusted, something shifts. A sudden wail from the end of the hall, followed by a chorus of laughter so bitter and broken it could pass for sobbing. A tray clatters, tin on stone, followed by a stream of curses and the slap of a heavy hand against skin. You swallow hard, the taste of fear catching in your throat, trying to convince yourself that this is all temporary, that you are just passing through, that nothing in here can truly touch you. But your body knows better. Your muscles tense at every sudden sound, your stomach knots tighter with every new stink, and your nerves hum with a steady, low-level panic that will not let you settle. You wonder how anyone here finds a way to forget, even for a moment, that this is their reality. Day after day, night after night, a parade of humiliation and endurance. You stop at the intersection of two corridors, frozen by the sight of a young patient curled on the floor, knees hugged to his chest, rocking and humming to a tune only he remembers. An orderly steps over him without pause, leaving a scuffed footprint on the thin blanket draped across the boy's shoulders. The boy looks up for just a second, eyes too old for his face shining with the kind of sadness that settles deep. A sadness you recognize even if you will never name it out loud. You want to help. You want to say something, anything, but the moment flickers away as quickly as it arrived, replaced by the steady march of those unseen, relentless eyes, and the next wave of foul air pressing you deeper into the labyrinth. You move on, guided by nothing but instinct and the quiet terror that tells you standing still means letting the place claim you. You hear the scrape of fingernails on wood, the hush of whispers pass through cracks in the walls, the soft scuttle of rats just out of sight. You try not to think about the stories these walls could tell if they had a voice. Stories of heartbreak, madness, small mercies and cruelties repeated until they become routine. You press forward, determined not to be swallowed by the unseen, but you cannot help but wonder what other senses you will lose before the night is over, and what it will take to survive being watched by 1,000 invisible eyes that never, ever blink. You do not get to keep anything, not even your name, when you finally reach the nurse's station, where the ritual of intake unfolds with a cold efficiency that leaves no room for dignity or protest. The light here is harsh, striping your face with yellow and shadow, making every blemish and tremor stand out as evidence against you. The nurse in charge is a woman of angles, her cheekbones sharp as judgment, her fingers swift and impersonal as they snap on rubber gloves and gesture for you to stand still, to lift your arms, to turn out your pockets and give up the last few bits of self you carried in from outside. You hand over your wallet, your watch, a crumpled photograph, even the comb you brought for luck, all dropped into a box stamped with a number that you will soon forget. Your own name comes out of your mouth sounding wrong, unfamiliar, thin, as tissue, and when she repeats it back to you, she tuts and clicks her tongue and writes something else on her clipboard. And you know in that moment that what you once were has been traded for a code, a number, a problem to be managed. You try to keep your chin up, but the next nurse, bigger, broader, his eyes flat and cold, unbuttons your shirt with hands that do not care if you shiver or flush, then yanks the fabric from your shoulders and tosses it onto a heap with a practiced flick. The chill bites at your skin, goosebumps blooming everywhere as you are made to step out of your shoes, your socks, your pants. Each layer a piece of yourself surrendered to the institution, each garment a reminder that the outside world has no power here. You clutch at the waistband of your underwear, desperate for one last shred of control. But the nurse's voice cracks like a whip, all the way. You hesitate, and he sighs. a heavy, exhausted sound that suggests he has seen too many people. Try to hold on to scraps of pride and none have ever won. You comply, shivering as cold air gnaws at your bare skin, trying to keep your back straight, your eyes steady, refusing to give the staff the satisfaction of seeing you cry. A second later, a gown is thrust into your hands, a shapeless thing, faded blue, scratchy and so thin you might as well be naked. You force yourself into it, fumbling with the ties, but the nurses do not wait for you to finish. They slap a saw, paper bracelet around your wrist and hand you a battered pair of slippers that do not fit. Then shove your pile of street clothes into a canvas sack and mark it with your new number. They do not bother with explanations or small talk. You are processed, cataloged, reduced. Your reflection in a smudged metal panel confirms what you already know. You have become another blank, another ward of the night, another shadow among the lost. The next phase is paperwork. You answer questions you never thought anyone would ask, about your family, your failures, the shape of your fears. Every answer is met with a frown, a note scribbled, a sideways glance. The doctor who interviews you barely looks up, just runs his pen down a checklist, his lips pursed in disapproval at your every word. He does not want your story. He wants your compliance, your silence, your signature on forms that promise you will obey. When you sign, your hand shakes. Maybe from cold, maybe from shame, maybe from the realization that you are signing away your right to object. When the final page is turned, the nurse marks a line on your arm in black ink. One more. Reminder that your body is no longer yours. She asks if you have any valuables, but the question is a formality. You have already been stripped of anything that could make you feel like a person. You try to remember what it was like to wear your favorite shirt, to feel the weight of your keys in your pocket, to smell your own cologne instead of the bitter blend of antiseptic and despair that hangs here like a permanent fog. You realize with a jolt that even your name has started to fade, replaced by the number they bark at you as they march you down the hall. You shuffle forward, feet scraping on cracked linoleum, trying to hold on to the memory of who you were before you walked in. But with every door you pass, every uniform you glimpse, every sidelong stare from the other patients, you feel pieces of yourself flaking away, identity replaced by procedure, personality traded for survival. Someone in the line ahead of you stumbles and an orderly barks at him to move faster. You want to reach out to help, but your hands hang limp by your sides. No one here reaches for anyone. You are learning the rules even before they are spoken. You are learning that names are a luxury, and in this place, even that is too much to hope for. You are led down a narrow hall, the echoes of your own footsteps, mingling with the shuffling of 100 others who came before. At the end, you are ushered through a door, and as it clicks shut behind you, you realize you have left the last traces of yourself behind in that intake room. All you have now is a number, a scratchy gown, and a cold certainty that everything you thought you knew about control, about belonging, about being seen, none of it will help you here. You try to picture yourself surviving, holding on, keeping some secret part of yourself hidden from the institution's gaze. But you know even hope will have to be rationed. And as the night presses in around you, you wonder what else you will lose before you are allowed to walk back out, if you ever are. You are herded into the main ward with a shove that leaves your shoulder aching, and the first thing that hits you is the smell. Unwashed bodies, sour sweat, faint urine, and a pungent undertone of something rotting that seems to cling to the walls and your own skin. The ceiling arches overhead in a way that makes the room feel both cavernous and suffocating, the kind of architecture meant to impress and contain all at once. All around you, patients drift and shuffle in unpredictable orbits, their movements jittery, erratic, strangely mesmerizing. Some stare straight ahead, jaws slack and eyes unfocused, while others cling to scraps of fabric or hum to themselves, retreating into private rituals you have no hope of understanding. You do not see violence, not yet, but the threat of it lingers, a restless undercurrent humming in every sideways glance and whispered insult. You take a shaky step forward, trying not to meet anyone's eyes, but your presence is like a stone, thrown into still water. Faces turn, some curious, some hostile, some so vacant you cannot tell if they see you at all. The weepers huddle in the far corner, clutching their knees, rocking gently. tears sliding down their faces as if leaking from a place deeper than grief. They do not speak, only keen and low, wavering tones, the sound weaving through the stale air like the echo of a broken lullaby. A tall, thin man in a moth-eaten coat paces the length of the ward, counting aloud, starting over every time someone interrupts his path, frustration sparking in his eyes as he mutters numbers under his breath. He passes you and flinches, as, if your nearness burns, then continues pacing. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. His voice rising and falling in a desperate pattern that you quickly realize is never meant to be completed. A woman with tangled hair crouches by the window, fingers pressed against the glass, mouthing words you cannot hear. Her gaze fixed on the world outside as though she could will herself through the pain and back into sunlight. Next to her, a boy sits cross-legged on the cold floor, staring at, his hands turning them over and over as if searching for proof that they still belong to him. Across the room, a pair of patients huddle together, sharing some secret joke, their laughter sharp and brittle, too loud for the space, cutting through the murmur like glass on stone. One of them glances up at you, grins with too many teeth, and then goes back to whispering in his friend's ear, the two of them dissolving into giggles that do not sound entirely sane. It is the silent ones that unnerve you most. They watch from the periphery, eyes glittering, mouths closed tight, unmoving except for the subtle twitch of a finger or the slow blink of a lid. You sense their attention, feel it pressing on your skin, cool and deliberate. They know you are new. They know you have not learned the rules, have not chosen your alliances, have not been claimed by any of the little tribes that form and dissolve like mist in the uneasy air. You realize you are being sized up. Your posture, your clothes, the tremor in your voice, the way you hesitate near the edge of the room. There is a language here, spoken in glances and posture, in how long you hold someone's gaze before looking away, and you fumble for a phrase book that does not exist. Someone bumps your elbow, a wiry woman with ink-black eyes, her voice a low hiss. Stay away from the beds by the radiator. They are for the ones who have been here longest. You take one of those, you will not sleep tonight. You nod, grateful for the warning, and move on, careful to keep your hands in sight. Careful not to walk too fast or too slow. A thin man with a wild beard giggles as you pass, lifting a battered tin cup in salute. You catch the sour reek of gin on his breath, though you are sure he has not tasted real liquor in years. You try to offer a half smile, but it falls away when he leans in, breath hot on your ear. They watch at night. Keep your shoes under your pillow or they will be gone by morning. You shudder. Unsure if he is joking, then realize you cannot afford to assume anything is a joke in a place like this. At the far end of the room, a nurse sits behind a wooden desk, her eyes on a ledger, the pen in her hand a weapon. She does not look up, but you feel her attention all the same. A net, ready to be cast at the slightest infraction. You edge past her, searching for a patch of floor where you can settle without drawing attention, but there is nowhere truly safe. Nowhere that feels untouched by sorrow or rage or resignation. You find yourself surrounded by stories you will never know, names you will never learn, tragedies that have become routine. Every cough, every whimper, every muttered threat is a reminder that here, you are only as safe as the people who tolerate your presence. You begin to understand that your survival depends on mastering the unspoken language, finding a place among the parade of the lost, and you wonder just how long it will take before you belong here, or if you ever will. And just as you start to settle your back against the wall, just as your eyes adjust to the shifting patterns of movement and noise, you hear a sound that does not fit, a single, sharp laugh, almost joyful, and you turn to see who could possibly still have the nerve to laugh in this place, and what that means for you. You do not get a guidebook, only a lesson whispered in the tremulous hush between shouts and laughter, when a face you almost overlooked leans close enough that you smell old bread and sweat and something sharper, maybe fear or maybe cunning. You notice him because his eyes never stop moving, darting to the doors, the beds, the orderlies, always taking the measure of risk. He sizes you up and, with a flick of his chin, beckons you to the shadow where the others will not overhear. His voice is barely louder than the rustle of his sleeve. words packed tight with urgency. Listen up. No one here survives alone, and no one tells you the rules. You mess up, you pay. You realize this is not an introduction. It is a warning. One you would be a fool to ignore. He tells you when to speak and when to disappear, how to keep your gaze down if the orderlies are in a mood, and which corners of the ward turn into battlegrounds when the sun sets. You learn to watch the line at mealtime. First come the lifers, the ones who have learned to scrape respect from empty bowls. Then the new arrivals, desperate not to seem desperate. You are told never to leave your shoes unattended, never to sleep on the beds by the radiator, never to accept anything from the smiling ones. They are always smiling, he says. But it is a smile that means you owe them, and debts in here are collected with interest. You clutch these rules like talismans, repeating them under your breath, afraid to trust but more afraid to be caught ignorant. He is not done. He shows you the difference between orderlies who are just tired and the ones who are dangerous, the ones who snap for no reason, who get pleasure from seeing you flinch, who invent infractions just to watch you squirm. He warns you that it is never about justice here, never about reason or truth. You see it in the way the staff moves, the roll of their shoulders, the glint in their eyes, the deliberate heaviness of their steps. The ones who hate you most will call you friend. The ones who look away are the only ones you might trust if you can trust anyone at all. He tells you about the night, the real night, when the lights go out and the guards get lazy or mean, when the thin walls seem to breathe with secrets and every groan or whisper might be a trap. Sleep with your face to the wall, he says. Sleep light. If you hear the keys jingle, pretend to be dead. His laugh is dry as bones, no warmth in it, only the kind of humor that comes from surviving one too many close calls. You wonder how many times he has followed his own advice and how many people he has seen ignore it just once. He does not tell you. He just nods, as if that is answer enough. You learn that even hope must be hidden. Too much optimism is a magnet for bullies, for the kind of men who like to crush whatever glimmers in the dark. He tells you which patients might be safe to approach and which ones will turn on you without warning. Their moods unpredictable as the weather. You memorize faces, catalog smiles and scars. Teach yourself to read danger in the curve of a shoulder or the tension in a fist. You are warned never to look too long at the staff's eyes, never to offer explanations, never to volunteer the truth. Trust costs too much here, he says, and you nod, wondering if you will ever afford it. Even kindness has a price. He reminds you that if someone shares a crust of bread, you owe them double, and if someone lends you a blanket, it is because they want something you have not figured out yet. You learn to be stingy with gratitude, careful with alliances, silent with your pain. You realize that the rules here are not written on paper but carved into skin, stitched into the hush that falls whenever an orderly enters the room. You do not argue, you do not bargain. You survive by listening, by blending in, by never making yourself memorable. The lesson ends with a look, hard, tired, almost sympathetic. He pats your arm once, a gesture that feels both comforting and like a warning. Remember, there are worse things than loneliness in here. Then he slips away, lost in the crowd, and you are left clutching these borrowed rules like a shield, trying to wrap them around your battered pride. You scan the faces around you, searching for the ones he described, measuring each movement, each glance, each smile. The ward seems different now, more dangerous, more alive, more full of traps you might stumble into. You feel the tension settle under your skin, humming and electric as you wonder what happens to the ones who do not learn the rules in time, and whether you will remember them all when the night finally comes. You find yourself standing in line for dinner, your stomach grumbling with hope and dread all at once, and as you shuffle forward under the flicker of weak gaslight, you realize that even hunger cannot drown out your sense of unease. The dining hall is a cavernous room lined with battered wooden benches, its ceilings blackened by decades of smoke and steam. The air heavy with a smell that is part grease, part old cabbage, and part something so sour it makes your eyes water. All around you, the clatter of tin plates and the scrape of spoons on metal ring out like an orchestra of misery, a relentless backdrop to the anxious silence of those who have learned better than to complain. The cook, A hulking figure in a stained apron stands behind a counter flanked by two stone-faced orderlies. He never looks up. Instead, he ladles out grayish mush with mechanical indifference, plopping a scoop onto your plate that steams in, the wrong way, as if what is in front of you is still alive and trying to escape. You glance down at your portion, lumpy, lukewarm, flecked with something you hope is just barley, but fear might be worse. The bread is a hard, shrunken wedge, crust as tough as old leather, and when you try to break it in half, it crumbles into dust that sticks to your fingers. You force yourself to eat, teeth scraping over the rubbery chunks, tongue recoiling at the taste. An oily blandness shot through with metallic aftertaste, as if the pot itself was made from old coins. Someone across from you retches quietly, then swallows, and the nurse on duty barely glances up, too busy making notations in a ledger to care about anyone's discomfort. Every mouthful is a negotiation. Do you risk gagging and choke it down, or do you leave it and face a growling stomach later, knowing the next meal could be worse? There is no winning here, only rationing misery in small, bitter bites. The conversation at your table is clipped, furtive. One patient mutters about the cook poisoning them on purpose. Another insists this is a good night because sometimes there are actual weevils in the soup, and at least tonight they cannot see any. Laughter comes in short, sharp bursts, the kind that leaves your nerves jangling rather than soothed. You notice hands moving quickly, bread stuffed under shirts, scraps of meat smuggled into sleeves, every gesture calculated to avoid the eagle-eyed orderlies prowling the aisles. You keep your head down, chewing slowly, swallowing hard, willing yourself not to stand out. Even here, in this ritual of shared suffering, there are hierarchies. Some get seconds, some get none, and all it takes is one wrong word, or one unlucky. Look to find yourself cleaning pots in the freezing yard after dinner, fingers raw and blue. The room's heat is stifling, but your skin still crawls with cold sweat. You catch a glimpse of the kitchen through a half-open door, shadows moving back and forth, flames licking the bottom of battered pots, and a pile of potato peels oozing in the corner. You try not to think about how many meals have been scraped, together from scraps and discards. How many rumors have spread about what really goes into the stew? The cook finally pauses, wiping his forehead with the back of his greasy hand, and you see the way he leans on the counter, exhausted, indifferent, maybe as trapped as the rest of you. His eyes flick toward you for just a second, and there is no recognition, no comfort, only the blank stare of someone who has stopped hoping that anything will ever change. You hear a commotion near the serving table, a scuffle over a slightly bigger portion, a harsh word, a slap, and then sudden, thick silence as everyone freezes. The orderlies swoop in, their boots thudding across the floor, and drag the offenders away without ceremony, the line resuming as if nothing happened. You force yourself to keep eating, throat tight with the knowledge that fairness is as rare as flavor here, and justice is just another rumor the new arrivals whisper before they learn better. When your plate is empty, you lick your fingers clean, more out of habit than hunger, and stare at the swirl of leftovers congealing in the cracks of the table, knowing you will see it all again tomorrow. The meal ends with a final clang of the serving bell, and everyone rises in a slow wave of exhaustion and defeat, shuffling back toward the ward with heads bowed and shoulders hunched. You feel the weight of dinner settle in your stomach, heavy and unsatisfying, and you cannot shake the suspicion that every part of this meal is a lesson, a reminder that here, gratitude is forced, comfort is rationed, and hope must be chewed carefully, or it will stick in your throat. As you return your tin plate and line up for inspection, you realize the taste of the food lingers long after the meal is done, bitter and unforgettable, and you wonder what else you will be forced to swallow before the night is over, and whether tomorrow's hunger will teach you to look forward to this dinner in spite of everything. You barely finish scraping the last crumbs of dinner from your plate when the warning bell clangs, its sharp metallic ring slicing through conversation and echoing across the hollow bones of the hall, signaling that it is time. Lights out. A chill tightens your shoulders as the orderlies sweep through with brisk, heavy steps, faces stony, voices clipped and unsympathetic. The ritual unfolds quickly. Patients funnel back to their assigned cots, the line shuffling slower now. Exhaustion, hanging heavy, but no one dares resist the urgency in those barking commands. Overhead, the gas lights flicker once, then are snuffed one by one, leaving only a handful of guttering lanterns casting warped shadows that leap and coil against peeling plaster, their shapes too tall, too thin, too eager. The darkness rolls, in with a finality that is absolute. No city glow here, no friendly lamp from a neighbor's window, only the thick velvet black that makes your heart hammer and your throat tighten. You lower yourself onto your cot, its wire springs groaning under your weight. The mattress thin as a bad excuse, and you try to pull the coarse blanket up to your chin, searching for a sliver of warmth in the bone-deep cold. All around you, the ward becomes a hive of nervous whispered sound. Someone across the aisle begins to whimper, high-pitched and frantic, until an older patient hushes him with a hissed warning. On your left, a soft, rhythmic tapping, someone drumming the side of their bed, a ritual to keep the nightmares at bay. The air itself grows heavier, stuffed with the sour tang of sweat, mildew, and that same creeping dread that refuses to let your lungs fill all the way. Every shuffle of feet, every cough, every sudden intake of breath stands out like a gunshot. You find yourself counting each heartbeat, as if numbers could anchor you in a place where time has lost all meaning. The darkness breeds monsters, some of them real, most of them born from memory and hunger. Your eyes play tricks, conjuring faces where there are only stains, turning the twist of a blanket into the hunched silhouette of someone who has been waiting just for you. You squeeze your eyes shut and try to breathe, but the air tastes of old medicine and unwashed linen, and the smell pulls you back to childhood nights when you begged for the hall light to be left on, when every shadow promised teeth. A distant voice begins to pray, the words thick and halting, a language you do not recognize but understand all the same. A plea for mercy, for mourning, for a kindness that will not come. From somewhere deeper in the ward, a sharp crack, maybe a bed frame, breaking, maybe a slap, maybe something worse. The orderlies stomp past, their keys jingling like the chains of some ancient jailer. Their boots thunder in the hush, a warning as clear as any spoken threat. You press yourself deeper into your mattress, wishing you could disappear into the thin fabric, wishing you could shrink small enough that nobody would notice you at all. Each moment stretches, elastic and endless. The dark becomes its own world, a place where secrets are louder, and every secret is dangerous. You wonder how anyone could ever sleep here, how their bodies ever relax enough to let their minds drift. Some of your neighbors have learned the trick. They hum softly, rock themselves with slow, practiced motions, or wrap their arms around their heads to block out everything but their own heartbeat. Others lie rigid and silent, eyes wide open, waiting out the hours. You try both, shifting and shivering, but comfort will not come, and every minute crawls by with cruel deliberation. Time thickens, your mind drifts. You count the cracks in the ceiling, then lose them in the dark. You try to remember your own bed, your own room, the sweet weight of blankets that did not itch and scratch, the hush of a night without fear. But every memory slips away, drowned by the symphony of sorrow that rises and falls all around you. Sobs, whispers, laughter, prayers, all weaving together into a lullaby that promises nothing but more darkness. You curl tighter, listening for the dawn, but the night in the asylum stretches on as bottomless as sleep itself, and you begin to understand that in a place like this, true rest is a kind of myth, and the darkness is never empty. You hold your breath, waiting for something, anything, to break the spell, and you wonder how many nights it would take before the dark here stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like home. You try to force your eyes shut, desperate for the mercy of sleep, but your mind rebels, racing, skidding, scraping itself raw against the walls of this foreign darkness, turning every sound into a threat and every silence into an accusation. It is not just the shadows that haunt you. It is the memories, the ghosts of regrets you thought you had buried, clawing their way back to the surface because here, with nothing but rough wool and fear for company, you have no distractions left to keep them at bay. The noises of the ward, soft weeping, distant coughs, the rhythmic creak of bed springs, blend with the discordant symphony of your own anxieties until you cannot tell which are real and which are the phantoms of your exhausted mind. You begin to see things that could not possibly be there. A figure crouched at the end of your cot, eyes gleaming in the dark, a hand reaching from under your thin mattress, cold fingers dragging themselves along your ribs. You jerk awake, heart pounding, breath coming in sharp, uneven bursts, and the room is unchanged. Only your terror has grown. There's a flicker of candlelight from a nurse's distant lantern, briefly illuminating the sagging faces of other patients caught in their own battles with invisible tormentors. You catch a glimpse of someone standing by the window, staring out into the endless night, his mouth opening and closing as if arguing with something only he can see. The darkness magnifies every fear, and you feel your thoughts twisting, reshaping themselves into nightmares that cling long after your eyes are open. Somewhere down the hall, a shriek splits the silence, high and wild, so raw it barely sounds human. The entire ward seems to pause, breath held, as if the walls themselves are listening. No one moves. No one comforts. You realize in that instant just how alone you are, how this place is built to strip you of comfort, to leave you marooned inside your own head. The man in the next bed whimpers, curling into himself, muttering a prayer that catches on each breath. You do not dare reach for him. You do not dare do anything but count your breaths, knuckles white around the edge of your blanket, as if the tightness of your grip could keep the nightmares out. You remember fragments of life before this night, a mother's lullaby, warm food, rain tapping against a window safe inside. But memory is fickle. Here, where everything soft has been scraped away, even good recollections arrive dressed in sorrow. You find yourself bargaining with the dark. If you can just hold on until the next sound, the next shift in the air, maybe the monsters in your mind will recede. But the ward offers no comfort, only more reminders that in this place, you are a guest in your own thoughts, unwelcome, unable to rest. The air grows heavier as midnight creeps closer, sweat beads on your forehead, sticky and cold, and you fight the urge to sob. The shame is almost worse than the fear, admitting to yourself that you are breaking, that you are not as strong as you hoped, that even a single night here can begin to unravel everything you thought you understood about courage. Each new hallucination comes with its own signature, a whisper in a language you almost recognize, the brush of something soft against your ankle, the certainty that someone, or something, watches you with hungry patience. You clamp your eyes shut and try to count backward from 100, but the numbers scatter like startled birds, and all you are left with is your own ragged breath. When you finally glance at the clock on the far wall, its face barely visible, the hands seem not to have moved at all. Time has stretched and folded, trapping you in a loop of panic and fragile hope. You wonder if the other patients are dreaming, or if, like you, they are trapped in a waking nightmare with no end in sight. Every minute feels like an hour. Every sound, every shift of air could be a prelude to something worse. You cling to the edge of your cot, toes digging into the mattress, trying to remind yourself that dawn will come, that sleep is not an enemy, but a reprieve waiting at the far side of terror. Yet as another patient begins to cry, muffled and hopeless, you realize that here, even dreams have sharp teeth. The best you can do is hold on, endure, wait for the storm of nightmares, both waking and sleeping, to pass. But as the minutes drag, you begin to wonder if you will ever know the difference between fear and reality again, or if the boundaries will blur so completely that even morning's light cannot save you. You tense at the sound of boots thudding in the corridor, the steady, measured rhythm of someone who knows their power and enjoys wielding it, each step ringing out as a warning that the fragile, uneasy calm of the night is about to shatter. You shrink further beneath your rough blanket, clutching it to your chest as the door creaks open, a sliver of lantern light slicing across the ward and casting monstrous shadows that dance along the walls. The orderly steps in, back ramrod straight, keys jangling at his hip, a cruel music that signals nothing good ever follows. His face is carved from stone, eyes sweeping the room with the casual menace of someone who has done this so many times that fear is the only language he bothers to speak. He barks a name, a number. Really, not a name at all, and you feel a surge of relief that it is not yours. only for that relief to curdle into guilt as the unlucky patient across the aisle stumbles to his feet, wobbling under the weight of dread. You cannot look away. The orderly moves with deliberate slowness, letting the silence stretch and throb, letting everyone know exactly who is in control. You catch the flash of resentment, or maybe terror, in the patient's eyes before he disappears down the hall, shoes scuffing against the floor, head bowed as if hoping the shadows will swallow him up. For a moment the ward holds its breath. No one dares move, not even the chronic mutterers or the restless sleepers. You are paralyzed by the knowledge that any sound, any sign of wakefulness could be an invitation for the orderly to turn and choose you next. But he does not leave right away. He lingers, his gaze heavy, searching the faces peeking out from under threadbare blankets. You hold your breath, heart jackhammering against your ribs, eyes squeezed shut as if that might make you invisible. You remember the whispered rules. Do not attract attention. Play dead if you can. Hope that the randomness of punishment passes you by. Still, the urge to beg, to plead for mercy, for understanding, for even the smallest scrap of compassion, flares. Up inside you, wild and childish, but you choke it down. You know from the set of his jaw, the rigid line of his shoulders, that mercy is not part of his vocabulary. The silence stretches on, broken only by the creak of the floorboards and the ragged breaths of those around you. The orderly turns, boot heels, scraping with slow, deliberate menace. He stops at the next bed, glaring down at its occupant, fingers flexing as if deciding whether tonight is the night to make an example. You feel sweat bead on your upper lip, your muscles screaming with the need to move, to run, to fight. But you stay as still as possible, barely daring to breathe. There is a power in invisibility here, a skill you must learn if you want to make it through even a single night. Eventually, with a grunt, the orderly steps away, the light from his lantern sweeping one last time over the faces of the ward before he stalks back through the door, slamming it shut behind him with a finality that rattles the panes. The darkness settles in, thicker than before, but relief is short-lived. Every footstep, every jingle of keys, every sharp command is a reminder that the danger is never far away, that safety here is a fleeting illusion, and no one is ever truly safe. You try to force your heart to slow, to convince your muscles to relax, but you know the night is not over yet. There will be more rounds, more names called, more chances for the rules to fail you. You stare at the ceiling, eyes wide and aching, waiting for the echoes of the orderly's footsteps to fade. You wonder what would happen if you slipped up, if you failed to hide your fear, if you dared to question or resist. The answer is clear enough in the haunted eyes of those around you, in the bruises and scars, and the careful, rehearsed silences that fill the dark. And as you lie there, tangled in blankets and panic, you realize you are playing a game whose rules shift with every heartbeat, and the only prize for winning is surviving until morning. But as the quiet returns, you cannot help but wonder what waits down that hall for the ones who do not, and whether you will ever stop fearing the sound of those heavy, deliberate footsteps stalking the corridors of your mind. You barely have time to unclench your fists before two orderlies return, wordless and rough, dragging you from your cot with hands that do not care whether you are awake, asleep, or somewhere in between. Their grip is iron, fingers digging into your upper arms, yanking you into the chill of the corridor before your brain catches up to what is happening. Your legs stumble over themselves, slippered feet sliding on cracked linoleum as you are, herded like livestock down a hallway that seems to stretch and warp with every trembling step. You try to make out the faces of the other patients you pass, searching for help or comfort, or even a spark of understanding, but everyone looks away, eyes squeezed shut, bodies curled inward as if to shield themselves from whatever is coming. The walls close in tighter, pressing you forward into a darkness broken only by the swinging glare of the orderly's lantern. A patchwork of flickering light and jagged, bottomless shadow. The air grows colder as you approach the infamous treatment room, and the odors shift. Gone is the scent of sweat and old bread, replaced by something sharper, more clinical, but also tinged with decay. A ghost of bleach, mingled with the coppery tang of blood, the sickly sweetness of rotting bandages, the scorched sting of old electric burns. Your stomach twists in anticipation, your mind clawing for any memory of comfort or control. You try to speak, to ask a question, to beg for mercy, but your voice sticks in your throat, strangled by the certainty that nothing you say will matter here. The orderlies grunt, push you ahead, and the door swings open with a shriek of hinges that feels alive with warning. Inside, the treatment room is a stage set for nightmares. You see the leather restraints, cracked and stained, lying limp across a battered cot, the buckles winking in the light like cruel promises. A tub sits in the corner, ringed with rust, half filled with water that steams with false warmth. A low table bristles with tools and bottles, none of them labeled, all of them menacing in their silence. On the far wall, a tangle of wires and metal rod sprouts from a box the size of a coffin, the sort of machine that hums with the memory of pain, that makes your skin crawl and your nerves scream even before it is switched on. A doctor waits in the corner, white coat buttoned tight, face hidden behind a mask of calm that fools no one. His eyes are the color of old bruises, lips pressed into a line that says he has done this before and will do it again. He gestures to the cot, and the orderlies press you down, the leather biting into your wrists and ankles, pinning you in place. You fight the urge to beg, to scream, to promise anything if they will just let you go. But all that escapes your lips is a desperate, broken gasp as the doctor leans over, his breath sharp with the ghost of whiskey and antiseptic. He speaks, voice cool and detached, outlining your treatment as if he is describing the weather. Ice bath, restraints, perhaps a taste of the machine if your agitation does not subside. The orderlies prepare the tub, their hands steady and uncaring, and you realize this is not punishment. It is routine, just another entry in a ledger, just another hour carved out of someone's night. The walls close in. The smell of soap and rust mingles with your own panic, and you begin to tremble, trying to hold on to the shreds of dignity that have not yet been stripped away. You scan the room, desperate for escape, for a loophole, for any sign that this might be some terrible mistake. But the faces around you are blank, unreadable, and the cold water in the tub steams with indifference. The doctor checks his watch, nods to the orderlies, and you are left to wonder how much more of yourself you will have to surrender before they are satisfied. The restraints dig in deeper. The chill of the room seeps into your bones, and your mind fractures under the weight of helplessness, shame, and terror. You brace yourself, hoping to endure, hoping to survive, hoping that when they finally release you, there will still be someone left inside worth saving. But as the orderlies close the door, muffling the world outside and leaving you alone with the doctor, the machine, and your own ragged breathing, you realize that in the asylum, there are worse things than pain. There is the fear that comes with not knowing how long the night will last, or what you will become by the time the sun rises again. You squeeze your eyes shut and try to make yourself small, heart thrumming like a trapped animal as cold water bites into your skin, soaking through the thin gown, sending shocks of ice up your spine that burn as much as they freeze. The orderlies do not speak. Their hands are methodical, lifting and lowering you, pinning your arms, holding your shoulders down until your body's desperate squirming slows to a shiver. The tub stinks of metal and old soap, and every second you spend inside it steals another ounce of warmth, another scrap of resolve. Your teeth chatter so hard it feels like your skull might splinter, and your vision blurs with the sting of humiliation, the ache of old bruises on your knees and elbows where you fought, however, weakly to stay upright. You try to focus on anything else, on the flecks of rust swirling in the water, on the flicker of light bouncing off the steel rim. But pain eclipses thought, and you are left with nothing but the raw, animal urge to survive. The doctor stands, above you, arms folded, his eyes two hard stones embedded in a face that refuses to show emotion. He reads your file as if your misery is merely a number on a page, an inconvenience that can be remedied by the proper application of suffering. Treatment will do you good, he says, voice flat as a gravestone, and you know there is no point in answering, no use in pleading. He signals to the orderlies, and you are yanked from the water, shivering so violently that your joints ache, stripped of whatever dignity you thought you had managed to retain. They wrap you in a blanket that is just as cold and twice as rough, then shove you down onto the cot, leather restraints creaking as they are tightened around your wrists and ankles. The doctor leans in, the sharp smell of whiskey and antiseptic clinging to his breath, his words clinical and cruel. Sometimes, it takes a little extra persuasion. The mind is a stubborn thing. You sense the other patients outside the door, feel their terror radiating through the walls, sense the way they flinch and huddle, desperate not to hear what is about to happen. You stare at the ceiling, counting cracks, willing your mind away from your body as the machine is wheeled closer. Cords dragging, switches flicked, the hum of electricity rising in the gloom. The doctor fits cold metal pads to your temples, his hands steady, and you realize with sick certainty that your pain is just a process to him, a necessary part of the routine. Breathe in, he commands, and you do. But the air is thin and sharp, cutting your lungs as the charge rattles through you, a convulsion that snaps your back into a painful arch. Every muscle locks, every bone in your body straining, and for a moment you are sure you will shatter, body and mind both splintered beyond repair. When the current stops, you sag, every limb buzzing and numb. The restraints are loosened, but the ache lingers, an aftershock that echoes through your teeth and fingers. You try to speak, to ask for mercy, but your tongue will not obey. The doctor scribbles something on his clipboard, nods to the orderlies, and you are left sprawled on the cot, the taste of blood sharp in your mouth. Shame washes over you in waves, hot and cold, as the orderlies pull you upright and march you back into the corridor, not so much released as discarded. One more patient processed, one more hour survived. Your thoughts stumble along behind you, unsteady, half-formed, as you re-enter the ward. You see the way the other patients shrink from you, eyes wide with pity or terror, each one marking you as another victim of the cure. You clutch your blanket around your shoulders, desperate to hide your shivering, desperate to hold on to some small piece of yourself that has not yet been broken. You ache for comfort, for kindness, for some gesture that might prove you are still human, still worthy of care. But the staff offers nothing. The lights overhead flicker, the shadows stretch and pool, and you feel yourself dissolve into the background, another ghost among many. You wonder how much more of this you can take, how many more rounds of the cure you will be forced to endure before you lose the will to fight, and whether, when the night finally ends, you will recognize the person who has survived. But as you slump onto your cot, heart still stuttering, you realize the worst part is not the pain itself, but the knowledge that it is only ever a rehearsal for what might come next. You lie curled beneath your blanket, muscles quivering, mind reeling from pain and shame, when you catch a flicker of movement in the gloom, a subtle exchange on the far side of the ward, almost invisible if you are not looking for it. Hope, in this place, survives as an act of rebellion, as a stubborn, desperate thing. A patient slips a crust of bread into another's palm with the speed of a conjuring trick, the gesture half shielded by the hunch of tired shoulders and the careful choreography of routine. You watch the transaction, pulse quickening, as the recipient's eyes flash with gratitude so raw it nearly breaks your heart. No words pass between them, only a nod, a shared secret, a moment's reminder that not every instinct has been scrubbed away by routine and cruelty. You sense a flicker of defiance. Too, another patient, a girl with cropped hair and wary eyes, sketches something in the margins of a battered notebook, shielding it from the orderlies with her body. You catch a glimpse of the words, a poem maybe, or a memory, lines scratched in blunt pencil that refuse to surrender to the blank brutality of the walls. Her lips move silently, reciting each word, insistent and proud, and for a heartbeat, the air feels lighter, as if the weight of the ward cannot quite smother the shape of longing. You know these acts, small as they seem, carry risks. You have heard the stories. Patients caught hiding contraband are punished without mercy, stripped of their meager privileges, left to shiver alone in a cell where even the thin comfort of a shared blanket is denied. But these moments of resistance are lifelines. You find yourself craving them, scanning the faces around you for signs of hope or solidarity, for the spark of someone who still remembers how to look another person in the eye. You think of the bread, the poem, The gentle hand that lingers just a second longer on a friend's shoulder. Each gesture is a victory, however fleeting, a crack in the armor of despair that encases everyone in this place. The orderlies prowl. The ward, heavy-footed and humorless, eyes quick to catch infractions but slower to understand what truly matters. You realize they cannot patrol every thought, every tiny rebellion that flickers and fades and flares again, even in the heart of suffering. You listen for more, the whisper of secrets, the hush of laughter at the far end of the room, the shiver of a shared glance. It is not much, but in the asylum even the smallest kindness is monumental, a rebellion against a system built to grind you down to dust. Someone slides you a page torn from an old book, the print smudged, the paper soft, with age. Your fingers tremble as you accept it, tucking it into your sleeve, feeling the pulse of courage it takes to carry even that little risk. You want to believe you would do the same, that you would reach out to the lost and the broken even when every lesson taught by the institution says otherwise. In these moments, you discover that survival is not just about enduring pain or keeping your head down. It is about carving out spaces of meaning and connection no matter how small. A word, a crumb, a stolen smile. They are proof that the machinery of cruelty is not perfect, that there is still something inside you that refuses to die. You watch the girl sketching, the boy slipping bread, the man hiding a single forbidden apple under his cot. You feel the pulse of rebellion, weak but insistent, echo through the ward. For a breath, you let yourself believe that kindness, however fleeting, can still be stronger than fear. But as the orderlies sweep through again, eyes sharp and hands ready, you realize every act of hope comes with a price, and you wonder what you would risk for one more taste of it before the night is done. You press yourself deeper into the cold, shadowed behind a cracked pillar, every nerve taut as a bowstring as you catch the low drone of voices filtering from the staff's room just down the hall. The orderlies, unaware of your presence, gossip with a vicious relish, their laughter jagged and mean, sharp enough to cut. You hear them trading bets on which patient will break first, mocking the newest arrivals, spinning stories about the one who howls at dawn and the silent girl who never eats. Their words stick to you like oil, making your skin crawl because in their mouths the patients are less than human. Fodder for cruelty, objects to be categorized and dismissed. You hear them joke about the punishments handed out after dark, the favorite targets, the subtle ways they keep order that never make it into any official report. You crouch lower, hardly daring to breathe, listening for scraps of information that might help you survive. The head orderly gripes about how some patients are just not worth the trouble, and boasts about having a special key to the locked ward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper as he warns the others not to wander too close, unless they want a visit from the ghosts. There is a ripple of uneasy laughter, then a pause. One of the younger staff admits he hates walking the east corridor at night, swears he has seen pale faces pressed to the glass, hands reaching from behind doors that should never open. You strain to catch every word, every inflection, cataloging names, threats, and rumors for future use. Each piece of gossip is a warning, a lesson in the kind of power that rules here. You learn who to avoid, the orderly with the crooked nose, who never misses a chance to teach a lesson, the nurse who hides her bruises beneath her uniform and takes her anger out on the helpless, the cook who keeps a private stash of sugar for his favorites and punishes those who dare complain. They talk of punishment as entertainment, of suffering as a joke, and you realize with a spike of nausea that your fate might hinge on the whims of people who do not even see you as real. One orderly mutters about a late-night incident. Fight broken up with fists, a patient dragged to solitary, a warning that nothing good comes to those who stand out. Your mind races, piecing together these fragments, desperate to make sense of the hierarchy behind the uniforms and the secrets behind closed doors. You commit every name to memory, every description, every hidden rivalry. In the shuffle of feet, the crackle of wrappers, you glimpse how quickly kindness turns to cruelty, how loyalty is bought and sold, how fear is used to keep order better than any lock or chain. The staff is not united, not really. They are bound by mutual suspicion and the knowledge that one mistake, one rumor, could make them targets too. A sudden silence falls as the head nurse walks in, her heels clicking like a metronome, her voice slicing through the chatter. She reminds them to be alert tonight. The moon is high and the mad are restless, she says, half laughing, half warning. You hold your breath as she turns, glancing toward the darkness where you hide, her eyes narrowing. For a terrifying heartbeat. You are certain she has seen you, that the game is up, but she only snaps at the orderlies to lock the doors and keep the ghosts where they belong. As the staff disperses, their laughter trailing away, you remain pressed against the stone, heart pounding. You have learned more than you wanted to know about their cruelty, their fears, the rumors that swirl through the asylum like smoke. You realize knowledge is its own shield and its own danger. You tuck every secret away, knowing you might need it. But as you ease back into the corridor, you hear the wind moan through the broken panes, and you wonder how many stories here are, never told. How many ghosts, living or dead, still haunt these halls, and whether you will become one of them before the night is done. You freeze as the temperature plunges, a chill that does not come from the cracked window or the stone floor, but from something deeper, a presence pressing against your skin, heavy as regret. The hallway is empty but for you and the flickering lantern at your feet, yet you feel the undeniable certainty that you are not alone. The air thickens, your breath fogs before your face, and the hairs on your arms rise in warning. A soft sound, a sigh, almost a sob, slips down the corridor, echoing without a source, and suddenly you see them, figures drifting through the gloom, their outlines blurred, faces half-lit and hollow-eyed. They do not walk so much as glide, feet never quite touching the ground, clothing ragged with the weight of memory. You recognize some by the scraps of rumor you have heard, the muttered stories of those lost to the locked ward, the forgotten, the ones who left without a name or a farewell. You try to back away, pressing your shoulders flat to the wall, but your feet feel rooted, your heart thrumming against your ribs in a rhythm that is not entirely your own. The ghosts pass close enough that you catch the faded scents that cling to them, old lavender and chalk, cheap tobacco and cold tea, sweat and despair. You want to call out, to ask them what they want, whether they are here for vengeance or pity. But your throat closes around the words. You see their mouths moving, forming silent syllables, and you realize with a shudder that they are telling their stories over and over, repeating the last words they ever said, the last secrets they carried. Some reach for you, not to harm, but to be remembered. Their fingers, pale and translucent, brush your sleeve, and a rush of sadness swamps you, thick as syrup, impossible to shake off. You are dizzy with fear and something else. A strange empathy, a sorrow so vast it nearly knocks you to your knees. The ghosts are not monsters. They are witnesses. Prisoners of a history no one outside these walls wants to know. You watch as one drifts to the barred window, pressing her cheek to the pane, eyes searching for the moon. Another sits cross-legged on the floor, tracing circles in the dust, lips moving in prayer or song. You realize each one is bound here by memory and neglect, each a casualty of someone's apathy or someone's cruelty. For a moment, the boundary between your fear and their longing blurs. You want to promise you will remember them, that you will carry their stories beyond these walls, but the promise gets lost in your pounding pulse. The cold grows sharper, cutting, to the bone, but you cannot move, not until the last ghost has slipped away, trailing wisps of sorrow in her wake. When the corridor empties, the silence is total, thicker than before, as if the building itself is waiting for your next move. You swallow the taste of regret, the ache of empathy, knowing that in this place, stories are currency, and forgetting is the cruelest fate of all. You clutch your arms around yourself, shivering, and wonder if one night is enough to haunt you forever, or if, like the ghosts of the forgotten, you are already halfway to becoming nothing but a memory drifting through someone else's nightmare. But as you push off from the wall and edge down the corridor, you cannot help but look over your shoulder, searching the shadows for faces you will never name, listening for voices that refuse to be silenced, and wondering just how many hauntings a person can survive before becoming a ghost themselves. You almost do not see her, just a flicker of white in the sea of shadows. A nurse whose eyes are not hard or empty, but warm and searching, as if she still remembers what it means to care. She moves through the ward with a quiet confidence, her footsteps soft where the others stomp, her hands gentle as she straightens a blanket, tucks stray hair behind a patient's ear, or wipes the brow of someone caught in the grip of fever. You watch her, unsure if you can trust your own senses, afraid to believe in kindness when the price of hope is so high. She glances your way, and for a moment, you feel seen, not as a number, not as a problem, but as a person. Her eyes linger, and there is a message there. I see you. I have not forgotten how to be human. She pauses at the foot of your cot, her expression softening as she notices the tremor in your hands. From the folds of her apron, she produces an apple, small and bruised, but impossibly precious in a world built on deprivation. She passes it to you with the swift subtlety of a magician, the gesture shielded from prying eyes by the angle of her body. Your breath catches, and for an instant, all the grime and despair of the ward fall away. You remember what it is to be grateful, to feel the sudden bloom of hope in your chest. She leans close, her voice low and urgent, promising to check on you before dawn. Her words a lifeline thrown across the chasm of isolation. You clutch the apple, fingers trembling with disbelief and a strange, fierce longing. The nurse moves, on blending back into the rhythm of the ward, her kindness a quiet rebellion against the machinery of cruelty grinding all around her. You see the ripple of her actions, other patients sitting up, eyes brightening, the softening of voices as her compassion infects the air. It is a dangerous gift, you realize. Kindness here can draw the wrong attention, can be punished as easily as any broken rule. But the nurse does not flinch. She offers a gentle touch to the girl with the notebook, a whispered word to the old man curled in the corner, and each time she is careful, but not afraid. You savor the apple, its smell sharp and sweet, its skin cool beneath your palm, a weight that anchors you to the possibility of survival. Every bite is a reminder that even the smallest acts can matter, that mercy can sprout in the most unlikely places. You hold on to the taste, letting it linger on your tongue, afraid to finish too quickly, afraid to lose the feeling that someone, even for a moment, chose to see you as something more than broken. You watch the nurse fade into the gloom, wondering what risks she has taken for you, what sacrifices she has made, and whether the world outside these walls will ever repay her courage. The gift stays with you long after she is gone. You turn it over in your hands, finding solace in its imperfection, in the bruises and blemishes that prove it is real. You feel a fragile hope take root, a sense that you are not completely alone, that your suffering has been witnessed, that compassion can be as contagious as cruelty. But as the ward settles back into uneasy silence, and the orderlies resume their patrol, you know the cost of kindness here is high, and you wonder how long it will last, and what you would do to protect the tiny flickering flame of mercy that has been passed into your care. You lie awake, heart still buoyed by the nurse's act of mercy, when you notice the others around you performing their own private midnight rituals, a patchwork of desperate hope stitched into the fabric of survival. In the cot beside you, an old man draws a circle around himself with his blanket, muttering a chant that sounds half like a prayer, half like a childhood rhyme. You realize it is not just superstition, it is armor, a talisman against the unpredictable cruelties of the night. Across the aisle, two young women trade the same scrap of fabric back and forth, each one tying it around her wrist before sleep. Eyes squeeze shut as they whisper wishes into the threadbare dark. Their ritual is wordless but urgent, a silent promise to keep one another tethered to memory, to hope, to something softer than pain. You watch as the boy with the trembling hands arranges small stones at the foot of his bed, lining them up with obsessive care. One for each year he has survived here, you overhear him whisper. He taps each one with the tip of his finger, murmuring a secret name, a list of the people he loved and lost, a litany against forgetting. Even those who seem broken beyond repair cling to these patterns, rocking back and forth, reciting fragments of psalms, tracing invisible sigils in the air above their chests. The ward becomes a landscape of rituals, every bed a tiny island of belief floating in the hostile sea of the asylum. You find yourself reaching for your own ritual, even if you do not fully understand it. You hold the apple close, breathing in its scent, letting your thumb trace the bruised skin. You picture the nurse's kindness, the hidden bread, the forbidden poems, and you realize these midnight rites are not just acts of comfort. They are declarations of defiance. In a world that would erase you, rituals are how you stake your claim to existence, how you anchor yourself to a sense of self no doctor or orderly can steal. Each prayer, each rhyme, each stone is a refusal to vanish, a way to say, I was here. I mattered, I remembered. The orderlies move past, boots muffled on threadbare rugs, but tonight you feel a strange solidarity. The ward is alive with quiet ceremony, each patient holding tight to what little power they can muster. You realize the staff will never understand these rituals, never know their meanings or the depths of their significance. That is why they cannot stamp them out. You meet the eyes of the girl with the notebook as she sketches a new line in her margin, and you nod to her, an unspoken promise. You will remember her ritual, and maybe she will remember yours. As the darkness deepens, the sounds of the ward grow softer, prayers fading into sighs, lullabies into breaths, dreams into restless silence. You realize that in this place, rituals are not just survival. They are resistance, small flames against the howling dark. You close your eyes, clutching the apple, and wonder what ritual you will invent tomorrow, and whether, with enough hope, you can turn survival into something closer to living. You flinch as a sudden skittering cuts through the hush. A rat, bold and unafraid, streaks across the stone floor, its beady eyes flashing in the half-light as it darts between the cots and disappears beneath the far wall. Instinct sends your heart hammering, your body recoiling in disgust. But as you watch, you realize the rat is not just a nuisance. It is a survivor, thriving in the shadows, navigating the maze of misery with a confidence you can only envy. Curiosity, reckless and sharp, draws you from your bed. You follow the creature's path, each step hesitant and muffled until you reach the edge of the ward. A cold draft curling under a battered door. The handle sticks, but you force it open, teeth clenched against the groan of hinges, and slip into a narrow staircase that winds down into the guts of the asylum. The further you descend, the colder and fouler the air becomes, thick with the reek of mold, spoiled potatoes, and a deeper, darker stench you cannot name. Your slippers squelch on damp stone. The flicker of your borrowed lantern throws monstrous shadows along the walls, revealing heaps of abandoned junk, broken wheelchairs, crutches, trunks oozing mildew. Somewhere in the distance, water drips, each drop a metronome that marks your passage deeper into this underworld. You find yourself shivering, but not entirely from cold. Here in the belly of the building, the world above feels impossibly far away, as if you have stepped outside time. At the end of the corridor, the rat reappears, pausing atop a pile of cracked dishes and gnawed books, watching you with something like challenge in its bright black eyes. You nudge aside a crate and discover the true secret of this place, a haphazard graveyard of patient belongings. Shoes, dolls, scraps of faded letters, even a child's stuffed bear with its fur worn thin from years of clutching. You kneel, sifting through the rubble, piecing together silent stories. A ring inscribed with initials, a tin soldier missing its head, a diary scrawled in frantic, looping script. Every object is a fragment of someone's life, lost or taken or thrown away when they entered these walls. A shudder runs through you as you imagine all the hands that clung to these things, all the names erased when the doors closed. The rat vanishes into a crack, but you remain overwhelmed by the weight of memory. You cannot help but feel a kinship with the scavenger, both of you foraging for scraps of comfort, both refusing to be erased. For a moment, you allow yourself to mourn, not just for what you have lost, but for everyone who ever hoped for rescue, for reunion, for a life beyond the institution's hunger. The cellar seems to sigh, the old walls settling with the breath of 100 unspoken goodbyes. You pocket a small keepsake, a button carved with the shape of a bird, its paint faded to almost nothing, feeling the need to carry some proof of the stories that linger here. As you turn to leave, your lantern's light flickers, and for a heartbeat, You swear you see movement in the gloom, a flicker of faces, a hand waving, a promise that memory endures, even in the dark. You climb the stairs, mind reeling, the button warm in your palm, and as you step back into the light of the ward, you wonder if what you have found will save you, or if it is just another weight to carry through the night that still lies ahead. You lie awake shivering beneath your scratchy blanket, the stolen button pressed to your palm as a slow terror begins to creep beneath your skin, a doubt that blurs the line between pretending and becoming. Exhaustion blunts your senses, and you start to wonder if the murmurs in your head are echoes from the ward, or if your own thoughts are slipping out, mingling with the whispered madness that hangs in the air like humidity. You watch the ceiling, twist and buckle in the half-light, and every sound, every cough, every footstep, every muffled prayer seems designed to pull you further from yourself. The darkness here is thick, not just the absence of light, but a force pressing against your mind, prodding, testing, waiting for you to crack. You recall the rules the veteran patient hissed in your ear. Never let them see you break. Never let the night win. But the rules do not tell you how to ignore the wild tremors in your hands, the urge to cry out just to prove you are still real. You squeeze your eyes shut and try to remember your life before this place. But memory is a stubborn beast. It slips away quick and sly, leaving behind only fragments. The scent of coffee on a winter morning, a song humming in your chest, laughter that sounded like freedom. Each memory flickers, falters, and then disappears, swallowed by the gray weight of the asylum's night. You start to doubt yourself. Is your trembling just cold, or is it fear? Is the slow unraveling in your thoughts a defense, or is the asylum finally winning? You look at the other patients, searching their faces for clues, and see only reflections of your own uncertainty. Some rock themselves, muttering under their breath, eyes darting as if chased by invisible foes. Others have gone still, their faces empty, their gaze fixed on something no one else can see. You wonder which is safer, fighting for sanity or surrendering to the fog. Every instinct tells you to hold on, to keep some small corner of your mind untouched. But it is harder with every passing hour. You recite your own name, your own story, silently and stubbornly, like a spell. You clutch the button, tracing its ridges, reminding yourself that you found it, that you made a choice, that you are not only what they want you to become, but doubt persists. If you can pretend to be sane long enough, does that make it true? Or does the act itself become a kind of madness, a performance so perfect it erases the person underneath? As the ward quiets again, you find yourself drifting at the edge of sleep, where dreams and reality intermingle, where every hope feels paper thin and every fear grows teeth. You wonder if the doctors can see the difference between pretending and becoming, or if that is the last private thing you own. The darkness presses harder, the lines blur further, and you are left counting the heartbeats between who you were and who you might become by morning. But as you finally close your eyes, you cannot help but worry that even survival here will cost you something you can never reclaim. And you wonder, when the sun rises, will you recognize the person who wakes, or will you have lost yourself to the very madness you tried so hard to outwit? You lie on your cot, mind battered and body bruised, when your fingers graze the wall beside you and encounter something unexpected. A series of scratches, etched deep into the plaster, hidden just out of sight from the orderly's rounds. You shift, heart pounding, and trace the markings with your fingertips. Words, dates, half-finished sentences spiraling across the surface like a desperate map. You realize this is not random vandalism. It is a manifesto, a record of resistance, a secret testament from those who came before. Each jagged line tells a story of who was here, what they endured, what they refused to forget. You feel a jolt of connection, as if the wall itself is reaching out to remind you that you are not alone, that your pain is not singular, that survival has always depended on the refusal to be erased. In the gloom, you squint and make out names, some faded to near invisibility, others bold and angry, carved by hands that shook but never faltered. You read pleas for help, curses hurled at the staff, scraps of poetry and philosophy, prayers and jokes, promises to loved ones never to be forgotten. Some marks are centuries old, etched in another era's slang and spelling, but the emotions are the same. Defiance, heartbreak, a yearning for justice in a place that feeds on silence. You discover a cluster of dates that trace the length of a patient's stay, each one ticked off like a tally of small victories against despair. A broken pencil nub lies on the floor nearby, its wood gnawed by nervous teeth, a tool and a weapon, both. As you explore further, you find a hidden corner where the writing grows frantic, looping and overlapping, a confession of crimes that may never have happened, or perhaps a desperate inventory of what sanity costs in this place. The words bleed together. Still here, still fighting, remember me. You press your palm flat to the wall, feeling the roughness bite your skin and the energy of all those who resisted, all those who refused to vanish, seems to hum up your arm and anchor you in the present. The wall is a living history, a chronicle of pain and stubborn hope, proof that every generation has left something behind for the next, a password, a warning, a dare to survive. You wonder who started the record, how many have added their own scratches since, and whether anyone on the outside will ever read these messages. The orderlies cannot see it, not really, not the meaning. They scrub the walls, repaint them, try to wipe away the evidence, but the words keep coming, carved deeper, scrawled higher, a language that cannot be silenced. You realize you are now part of this secret tradition, this rebellion written in dust and sweat and splinters. You feel the urge to add your own mark, to leave a piece of yourself in the lineage of the forgotten. With trembling hands, you pick up the pencil nub and press it to the wall. You hesitate, searching for the right words, for a message that will matter to the next lost soul who finds it. Maybe you write your name, maybe you scrawl a warning, a joke, a memory of home. Whatever you choose, it is a promise. To yourself, to everyone who came before, to everyone who will come after, that you will not go quietly, that your story will echo, that you will take up space, even if only in this thin layer of plaster, between you and oblivion. As you return the pencil to its hiding place, you feel a flicker of pride. The wall's unwritten history pulses around you, a defiant heartbeat in the silence, and you wonder what other stories remain hidden, waiting to be found by hands desperate enough to search. But as the night deepens, you know the true power here is not in what is forgotten, but in what survives. You are startled by the first weak light seeping through the cracks in the filthy windows, a gray dawn that feels more like an accusation than a blessing. But for a moment, you dare to believe. The worst is over. The world outside is waking, indifferent to your ordeal. But inside the asylum, the routines grind on with mechanical cruelty. The promise of morning does not bring relief. It only reveals the damage the night has carved into every face, every slouched posture, every trembling hand. You watch as patients rise from their cots, some with the practiced numbness of veterans, others with the brittle hope that today might be different. The air smells of stale sweat and sour breath, fear and resignation. You realize there is no magic in daylight here, no safety in the sun, just a new set of humiliations and rituals to endure. A bell clangs somewhere beyond the ward, jarring and insistent. You force yourself upright, muscles aching, body shivering in the chill that never quite leaves these stone walls. The orderlies reappear, their voices sharp with authority, barking instructions that are as familiar as the peeling paint and as relentless as the hunger gnawing your belly. You shuffle toward the wash basins, cold water stinging your skin, the line of bodies swaying like reeds in a wind that never lets up. Breakfast is doled out with the same indifference as dinner, a ladle of gray porridge, a wedge of dry bread. No acknowledgement of the night you survived, no reward for making it through. You chew mechanically, eyes down, jaw aching, pretending the taste is something you chose, not just another penalty for being here. You glance around, searching for the nurse who brought you the apple, but she is nowhere to be seen. The kind faces have vanished into the background, replaced by the blank, businesslike expressions of the day shift. The energy of the ward changes with the morning, a brittle, guarded quiet replacing the chaos and fear of the night. You see it in the hunched shoulders, the eyes that avoid yours, The way everyone seems to be calculating how much of themselves they can afford to reveal. The sunlight slants through the window, pale and cold, illuminating the stains on the walls, and the bruises on arms and faces, the evidence of last night's battles. Nothing is hidden by daylight except hope. A patient in the next cot tries to strike up a conversation, voice hoarse from disuse, but the words come out thin and uncertain. You answer with a nod, afraid that any show of spirit might be misread, punished, or simply ignored. The staff always watch, their gaze stripping you bare in a way that is different from the violence of the night, but no less exhausting. You wonder if they see you as a threat, a burden, or just another problem to be processed and forgotten. The room fills with a tired murmuring, the sounds of another day beginning, the cycle turning once more. As you finish your meager breakfast and rise to stand in line for inspection, you realize the true cruelty of this place is not in the horrors of the night, but in the endless repetition of its mornings. Every day is a fresh test. How much of yourself you can hide, how little you can hope, how quietly you can survive. You clutch your coat tighter, the button in your pocket a small secret weight, and you promise yourself you will not forget what the darkness taught you. But as the day drags you back into its routines, you cannot help but wonder whether the dawn is a gift or a curse, and if you will ever see the sun without thinking of all the things it fails to chase away. You stand stiff-backed as the head physician enters the ward, his crisp white coat slicing through the drab morning like a threat disguised as order, his clipboard already bristling with notes and judgments before he even glances your way. He moves down the line with the icy precision of someone who believes suffering is a science, one that can be measured, corrected, and filed away. His eyes are pale, unreadable, and when they land on you, you feel the weight of their calculation, as if he is tallying up your flaws, your failures, your chances of breaking before lunch. Around you, the other patients flinch or freeze, each one tensing beneath his gaze, each one hoping to be invisible, to slip past without being chosen. He stops at the bed next to yours, pokes and prods at a trembling shoulder, asks a barrage of questions in a voice that is more command than inquiry. The answers do not matter. You see it in the way his pen scribbles across the page before the patient has finished speaking. To him, every story is a symptom, every symptom a flaw in need of correction. You watch as he issues instructions, double the restraints for one, withdraw visitation for another, a cryptic note to review treatment protocols for a third. His tone never changes, but the consequences echo through the ward like a stone thrown in still water. When he reaches you, you fight the urge to shrink back, to avert your eyes, but you hold his gaze for a moment, defiant, tired, but unbroken. He frowns, lips twitching in displeasure, then rattles off questions about your night, your appetite, your willingness to participate in recovery. Each word tastes like ash on your tongue, but you answer with careful neutrality, knowing any hint of anger or despair will be filed away as evidence of deeper illness. He scribbles a note, marks your name, and moves on, leaving the faint stink of cologne and disinfectant in his wake. The rounds continue, orders given, punishments doled out, moments of mercy rare and fleeting. You see how the staff gathers in, his shadow, eager to please, eager to avoid his displeasure, their smiles thin and brittle as ice. The head physician never looks back, never lingers. His interest in your well-being extends only as far as the next line in his ledger. You realize the doctor is not your enemy, not exactly, but he is not your savior either. He is the architect of routine, the keeper of rules, the person who decides who is well enough to leave and who will linger here forever, waiting for someone to notice they are still alive. As he finishes his rounds, the tension in the ward slowly dissipates, but a chill lingers, a warning that every morning brings its own kind of reckoning. You watch the doctor's back as he leaves, clipboard tucked under his arm, and you wonder if he ever sees you as anything more than another case to be solved, another page to be turned. You promise yourself to hold on to the parts of you that cannot be measured, to survive his gaze, to outlast his questions. But as the doors swing closed behind him, you cannot shake the feeling that your fate, like so many others, hangs on the thin thread of someone else's definition of cured, and you wonder if the day will ever come when you get to write your own diagnosis, your own ending, on your own terms. You stand at the edge of the ward, pressed between the routine and the relentless need to adapt, realizing that every morning is a test of who you will become, whether you can keep what is left of yourself intact, or if you will have to trade a piece of your soul just to make it through another day. The patients around you shift and settle, each negotiating their own bargains with survival. Some hide behind perfect compliance, others nurse a stubborn spark of defiance, and a few have already retreated so far inside themselves that nothing outside can reach them. You catch your reflection in a splintered mirror above the wash basin, a face that is not quite yours, eyes rimmed with exhaustion and something harder, more determined. It hits you that in this place, you have to choose every hour who you will be, how much dignity you will fight to keep, how much hope you dare to let show. You watch as an orderly shouts at a patient for moving too slow, the threat of punishment sharp and immediate. In that instant, you are forced to decide. Will you stand up, risk drawing attention, or will you lower your gaze and slide by, preserving your place in the invisible pecking order? You remember the whispered advice from your first night: trust no one, but do not make enemies without cause. You find yourself mimicking the posture of the veterans, learning to answer questions with a nod and a blank expression, to stay quiet, but never too quiet, to blend in without vanishing completely. It is a dance, a negotiation, a gamble. Every act of kindness is calculated, every act of resistance weighted against the cost. Your mind runs through the faces you have come to know: the girl who hides her poetry, the boy who lines up his stones, the old man who recites prayers at dawn. You wonder who among them will make it out whole, and who will be broken beyond repair. You cling to your own small rituals, a word scribbled on your sleeve, a scrap of bread saved for someone who needs it more. These are your boundaries, your proof that you still have choices, even in a world designed to erase them. You realize that here the only real victory is to keep choosing, to refuse to let the system decide for you who you must become. As the day unfolds, the staff watch you closely, looking for cracks, for signs of rebellion or despair. You force yourself to smile when needed, to meet their eyes just long enough to appear compliant, but never long enough to be noticed. Each interaction is a test, and you play your part with a mix of pride and caution. You wonder if the person you are becoming is someone you will recognize outside these walls, or if survival here means losing something essential forever. But as you stand in the morning light, battered but not broken, you promise yourself you will keep making choices, keep holding on to dignity, and keep fighting for a future that belongs to you alone, even if that fight must begin all over again. With every dawn, you watch as the hours crawl forward, each one heavy with monotony and the secret hopes that bloom, however quietly, in the backs of your mind. You stare at the barred windows, measuring the impossible distance between where you are and where you want to be, your mind painting impossible maps of escape, over walls, under fences, through doors you have only seen in dreams. Day after day you learn which staff turn a blind eye, which orderlies take bribes, which nurses can be trusted for a whispered warning. The other patients share rumors in snatches. Someone claims to know of a tunnel beneath the kitchen. Someone else insists a loose grate in the yard leads to freedom, while another warns that everyone who tried has vanished, leaving only stories in their wake. Hope and fear tangle inside you, the promise of escape as intoxicating as it is terrifying. You weigh your options, tracing routes in your mind, wondering who you could trust if it came down to it, and who might betray you for a few moments of favor. Each conversation becomes a calculation, every gesture a question, friend or foe, ally or informant. You begin to understand the price of escape is not just risk, but the certainty that success means leaving others behind, the ones who are too broken or too scared or simply too resigned to try. The guilt of even considering it gnaws at you, but the longing for freedom is sharper, more insistent. You imagine the feel of grass beneath your feet, the smell of clean air, the sound of laughter without menace. Each fantasy is a lifeline, but also a test, a measure of how much you still want to fight, how much hope you can afford before hope itself becomes another kind of prison. As you drift through the routines of the day, you catch glimpses of other, would-be escapees. A girl who stares too long at the door. A boy who walks the perimeter, counting every step. A man whose hands tremble when the gates are unlocked for deliveries. You recognize yourself in their hunger, in the way their eyes flicker with secrets. You want to reach out, to share plans or warnings or simple comfort. But trust is as dangerous as the guards, and betrayal is always waiting in the shadows. Every failed attempt is punished harshly. Solitary confinement, loss of privileges, rumors of beatings in the locked ward. The cost of freedom is high and the consequences for failure higher still. You tell yourself you are only dreaming, that you would never actually try, that escape is for stories and legends, not for people like you. But as the day winds down, and you find yourself staring at the sky through the cracked window, you cannot help but map the clouds, searching for patterns, for roots, for omens. The longing never leaves, it curls in your chest, steady as your pulse, reminding you that the will to escape is proof you have not been broken. But as the staff make their rounds and the doors clang shut for another night, you are left to wonder whether hope is your greatest weapon or the thing that will destroy you, and if you will ever know the difference until it is too late. You sit hunched on your cot, dawn a faint memory and night still far off, when a realization presses into your chest. No matter how many rules the asylum invents, there is a part of you that refuses to surrender. A stubborn core the doctors cannot reach. A need for meaning that endures long after hope should have been crushed. Through the endless repetition of chores, humiliations, and whispered threats, you catch yourself marveling at your own resilience, and the resilience of those around you. For every indignity, there is a small victory. A glance exchanged, a joke smothered by a cough, a memory smuggled in a song. Even the weakest among you carry something the system cannot kill. The urge to endure, to bear witness, to outlast the place that would rather erase you. You watch the veterans of the ward, men and women who have lost almost everything, yet whose eyes still flash with the ghost of their former lives. They know how to hold back their words, how to hide their pain, how to carry dignity like a secret coin hidden in a sleeve. You learn from them, imitating the tilt of their heads, the way they shield each other from the orderly's worst cruelties, even the quietest gestures, helping someone to their feet, sharing a scrap of food, singing a half-remembered lullaby, become acts of rebellion, proof that spirit and connection can survive inside these walls. In a rare, fleeting moment, you feel something like pride. The system may have stripped away your name, your comforts, your future, but it has not touched the deepest part of you. It cannot reach the part that dreams, that hopes, that burns with the possibility of life after all this. You cling to your rituals, your memories, your hard-won friendships, knowing that these are the roots that will keep you grounded. For every rule you obey, you bend another in secret. For every humiliation you endure, you nurse a wound that will one day scar over. Proof that you were here, that you survived, that you mattered. You sense the staff's confusion at your endurance, their frustration when you meet their gaze and refuse to cower. You realize the true test is not how well you follow their orders, but how stubbornly you cling to what is yours. Your mind, your humor, your quiet dignity. You watch a friend teach a new arrival a song from her childhood. Hear another recite the words of a poem scratched into a wall. You see these tiny rebellions light up the ward, glimmers in the gloom, and you understand that the asylum cannot kill what it cannot understand. The pulse of hope, the stubbornness of a soul that refuses to break. You look out the barred window. As afternoon fades, the sky bruised with hints of sunset, and you make a silent promise, to yourself and to everyone who came before you, that no matter how long the night, you will not give them everything. You will keep something for yourself. A story, a secret, a sliver of light that no key or rule can ever take away. And as you turn back to face the ward, you wonder how many others are making the same promise, and if together, all your hopes might someday add up to something that cannot be erased. You stand at the threshold as the sun dips low, casting long, orange slashes across the warped floors, and for a breathless instant you are neither inside nor outside, suspended between what you have endured and what the world expects you to become. The staff hustles you toward the gate, whether released or simply relocated, you feel the eyes of the institution marking every step, measuring how much of you is left after one night inside. You clutch your secret talismans, a button, a word scribbled on your sleeve, the taste of an apple you will never forget. Proof that survival is not just breath and heartbeat, but memory and will, and the refusal to vanish. As the doors swing open, the air outside tastes shockingly clean, too bright, too loud, and you stagger beneath the weight of it, blinking against the impossible ordinariness of trees, of traffic, of sunlight on your skin. You realize you are not the same. The world beyond the gates tilts under your feet, and you carry with you all the scars the night has left. Visible and hidden, woven into your muscles, humming in your thoughts. Every step is a negotiation, a test of whether you can remember how to belong to a place that has never known what you survived. You feel the glances of strangers slide off you, unaware of the institution stamped into your posture, the careful way you flinch from sudden noise, the memories that catch and snag at every shadow. The freedom you craved tastes different now, sharper, lonelier, edged with the knowledge that there are asylums everywhere, places that hunger for your silence, that thrive on the stories people are too afraid to hear. You clutch the weight of your experience like a shield, determined never to forget what you have seen, what you have endured. For every indignity you carry a lesson, for every terror a new strength. The world outside moves too fast, seems too careless, as if it has forgotten places like the one you have just left even exist. But you remember, you know the cost of survival, the price of dignity, the silent bargains you made to hold on to your soul. You see the world differently now, through the lens of one who has been stripped to the bone and found something left that could not be taken. As you move away, from the gates you sense the asylum receding behind you, but its lessons do not fade. You become the carrier of a warning, a story, a living testament to what it means to survive in a world that invents cages for the inconvenient, the different, the lost. The scars you bear are your credentials, your proof. You promise yourself to speak for those still trapped, to remember the ghosts whose names were carved into the walls, to become the person who listens, who never looks away. The final reckoning comes not in leaving, but in what you do with the freedom you have clawed back, how you tell the story, how you pass it on, how you refuse to let what happened become just another secret locked behind iron gates. And as the light changes, and you walk forward into the vastness of the ordinary world, you know the true lesson. Sanity and madness are only lines drawn by power, and the bravest thing you can do, the only thing worth doing, is to remember, to bear witness, and to refuse to be silent. You stand at the edge of the world you thought you knew, sunlight sharp on your face, each breath a little easier than the last. The asylum's iron gates have closed behind you, but their echo follows, reminding you that not all cages are built of stone and steel. For the rest of your life, you will carry this night inside you. The chill of old corridors, the taste of fear and hope rationed in equal measure, the memory of small kindnesses that blazed like lanterns in the dark. Yet as you walk away, shaking off the dust, gripping your secret tokens, piecing together the self you fought so hard to keep, you sense something shift. The city bustles around you, indifferent, oblivious, but you move through it with new eyes, the weight of 1,000 forgotten stories stitched into your bones. You listen for the heartbeat of the world, children's laughter in the park, the bark of a distant dog, the hopeful hush of dawn on strangers' faces, and for a fleeting second you let yourself belong. Maybe you never sleep quite the same again, never trust quite so easily, but you refuse to let what happened become just another shadow in your past. You have seen what it costs to survive a place built for forgetting, and you have learned what matters most. The names you remember, the rituals you invent, the hope you hold on to even when everyone else has let go. There are scars that will fade and scars that never will. But you also find a kind of power in bearing witness, in being the voice for those still trapped, in refusing to let their pain vanish into silence. You understand now. Your story is not just about enduring a single night in a Victorian asylum, but about what you do with that knowledge, how you share it. How you use it to change the world one small act of memory at a time. You keep your promise. You speak the names. You pass on the secrets. You build a legacy out of everything the world would rather erase. And as you turn down the next street, a new question stirs. One you cannot shake. One you know someone else has already lived and survived before you. Because history is never really finished with us. There are always more nights to endure, more battles to fight, more stories to unravel beneath the dust and the blood and the myths. Maybe you survived the asylum, but would you have lasted a day in the sands of ancient Rome? Would you have found hope in the roar of a Colosseum crowd, dignity in the mud and sweat and terror of the gladiator's life? If you have ever wondered why it sucked to be a Roman gladiator, you are not alone, and next time you will find out exactly why. The next chapter is waiting, and the past has never been more alive. So when the night falls and the world goes quiet, come back. There is always another story to tell, another forgotten truth to reclaim. Next time on Boring History for Sleep, you will step into the blood-soaked arena, taste the fear and the fury, and discover just how brutal and just how human history can be. Until then, remember, survival is not just about making it through the night. It is about carrying the story forward for yourself, for those still lost, and for everyone who dreams of a dawn on the other side of darkness.